Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack for Business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Fransgrote from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc.
Today's topic is community, key to thriving and driving biz. And from the audience perspective, how can I create immersive events or experiences that truly connect with my audience and drive meaningful business growth? Our guest today will help you answer that question. His name is Chris Sturges from Fired Up Events. A seasoned expert with over 30 years of experience in film and event production. Chris has a knack for bringing people together through storytelling and dynamic events, showcased in major projects like Vancouver 2010 Olympics, Vancouver Mural Festival, and the BC Place roof installation. His background is in the film industry. It includes roles such as SPFX technician or special effects technician on shows like Stargate, SG1, The Chronicles of Riddick, and Riverdale seasons 3 and 7, where his technical and creative skills came to life. Starting his journey at just 11 years old, Chris discovered the power of events to create meaningful connections. Today, he blends his passion and expertise to design immersive experiences that help businesses strengthen their relationships and drive growth, offering practical tips and insights for entrepreneurs and leaders alike. Chris, welcome. What is your favorite quote or saying, sir?
This put me on the spot a bit because I have a lot, but I actually rolled with "No plan survives first contact with the enemy." And that's by Winston Churchill. And I swear it was written for the event industry. There is no plan. There is no thing that you will do that will actually survive, whether the enemy is your audience or whether it's your clients. Nothing you plan out in advance is going to come through unscathed. And that's just the reality. But also, that is the positive reality, because if you're ready for it, you relish that opportunity to start adapting it even more tightly towards your clientele and your audience. So roll with what they want. Do not be like Budweiser and Budweiser Light and dial into a failing plan.
It sounds like parenting 101.
It is. This is all about parenting. What do you think communities are? Communities are a family. You build events because you want your family to enjoy them.
Tell us about your company tagline.
So Fired Up Events, I've always done things. I hate doing things that everybody else does. And I've got a particular skill set that I can create and bring into being things that are unique. So I went with the idea of we bring spectacular to your event. It's fun, it's catchy, it invites questions, and it describes what we do. For example, the event we just ran last Saturday lit up an entire business village and community with Christmas lights and the 20-foot Christmas tree, and we added in a 12-foot long polar bear and a selfie frame. We also put lasers over the pond, a protected area for wildlife, but we wanted to light it in such a way that it wouldn't be disruptive to the wildlife and their habitat. And the lasers actually just created sparkles across an entire almost 2-acre site that looked absolutely gorgeous. It was like fireflies. And that was spectacular. And it's thinking out of the box that we do. We build things or create things or suggest things that you might not have thought of.
As soon as you mentioned the lasers, I was thinking of cats and all the cats in the neighborhood coming out playing Chase That Thought. But the sparkles, that is really fantastic. So community is a vital ingredient for what you're saying. How does that community translate into a thriving business? I think I already know the answer, but from your perspective.
And yeah, I think we all know the answer on a very unconscious level, but actually spelling it out, you start to get a very clear idea of it. What are your business worries as a business owner, especially if you've got a brick and mortar location? What are the odds that you're going to start to have, for whatever reason, COVID or the work stoppage from, say, Canada Post, or maybe there's construction outside your business? All sorts of things can disrupt your business. If you have a very tight community already, they're going to come no matter what. They're going to support you. They're going to order things in. They're going to group the friends that all shop there. We'll send one person in to do a shop and buy for everybody. These are all different ways your community is going to make your business more resilient. That's how you weather these crises that always happen. If you want to expand your business opportunities, you love it, but you need to get to the next level, you need to buy a new oven or you need to buy a new thing or whatever. You put it out to the community. Right? The community is your audience, is the people that are buying from you, but those are also your pool of potential investors. Those are your pools of potential franchisees. And also those are the people watching your back. They say, hey, I just heard that so-and-so is planning to open a competing store next door to you. They let you know within enough time that you can adapt. They are your people. They're your family. And they help you stay in business. And you help them. Maybe it's fantastic things. Maybe it's fantastic service. But they become the people that you love to serve.
Chris, you mentioned the pandemic. You can't get more organic than blowing things up. Private really does require you to be there. But then this pandemic happened and we went online. At first, it was very flawed because we had no other choice, but we did it or we died. And you've been one of the survivors of making community a real term instead of an artificial term. What does an online community look like?
Online community is really the same as a real community. You have a group of people that meet, and we're not shaking hands, but we're meeting online. We're meeting on a regular basis. We're talking honestly. We're sharing a comfortable space. Maybe we're drinking beer or coffee, each in our own room, but we're together in that. And it comes down to the communication. Comms equals community. The com part of community is communication, maybe? Authentic communication is what creates community. We're building a human connectivity app, which is different from social media. It allows genuine human connectivity where people can share things that are private without worrying about randoms from the audience disrespecting them, because there are no randoms from the audience. It creates a small core of people. I ran a convention in 2022, and because it was still pandemic, we ran it with just the core group of people, the actual organizers, and we streamed everything. So we just had our guests and technicians on site. In the beginning, one of the first things my assistant did was she said, hi, Chris, I should introduce you to these people, to James and to, I've just forgotten the other person's name. And I said, yeah, I know them. I've met them all before. And she said, yes, but you've never met us. We've been working for you for 2 years and you've never met us in person. And I had completely forgotten that we had never actually met in person because we developed that authentic communication online and it still existed and it was natural by that point. So developing authentic communication, and that's the basic rules of society. Be honest, be genuine. Don't make crazy, wild promises. Don't poke fun at other people. Don't punch down. Don't be obnoxious. If you end up with somebody like that, you need to have a conversation. It's not a matter of booting them because that's not how communication works. So have and maintain honest, genuine communication at all times. We just started a new chapter reading, and that's the basic first rule of it. Communicate.
One of the things that I've seen happen in small town Canada, probably small town US, people supporting the local pickle league, baseball, soccer. That's still a path that a small business should look at. When you're supporting, it's assuming you're being pragmatic, but also realistic and authentic. You're doing that because you want to see someone else have success. You're sharing that success. And it also has a branding message sometimes, and depends on the nature of the share. Sometimes you see it, and sometimes you don't see it at all, but it's there. How does that help a business? How does that help a business do more?
First of all, be authentic right from the get-go. If you're supporting the local hockey team or what, like the AAA or Bantam or which minors, etc., do that because that's your passion, irrespective of your business. It's got nothing to do with the business. That's your passion. So your passion is genuine and authentic. And then absolutely increase the branding as you do that. But you're doing it because you want to support that. And your audience and your community and eventually your customers will recognize that as your passion point. They will be far more likely to engage with that. I know somebody that put their company logo on the local lacrosse team's jerseys because they bought the jerseys. And the funniest thing was their logo had a different community name than the community they were sponsoring. So all the jerseys had the wrong name, but everybody loved it. They appreciated it so much. The team appreciated it so much because the jerseys were professional level. They actually felt empowered simply by the jerseys. It started discussion points. As soon as people started talking about it, you're halfway there to a community, right? And when they actually discussed how passionate the business owner was and why they were doing it, you had a chance for a new customer. So your community is building customers for you. They're closing the deals for you. That's a pretty valuable benefit. If you've got 200 or 300 people in a community and they're all closing for you.
Chris, your business is based around events.
Yeah.
I still remember a president's dinner of a service club that was a fairly spectacular fail. And it took some time before I could gain any insight or peace. I mourned it for a good month. When something goes spectacularly wrong, like the earth shuts down, and you just dropped $30,000 on the Coliseum, how do you personally manage to grow and come back and learn when every part of you wants to hide?
A large chunk of that is going to be in your personality. I've failed, I wouldn't say more times than I've succeeded, but I've definitely succeeded a lot more times. I have failed enough. And I've forgotten who actually said it. Basically, I think it might have been Ford or somebody along those lines. I've failed more times than you've even tried. He was a Fortune 500 CEO at the time, massive businessman. And that's taking the failures in stride and learning about them. One of the events that I run that's specifically for event people is called the Bad Idea Party. And that's how we celebrate the things that we didn't do or we did do, and we learn things. We celebrate failures, but more in particular in events, it's specifically choosing not to do something. We share those ideas, and almost always somebody else in the community has different resources and goes, hey, that idea is great. I can use that. Wait a minute, the police told us not to. I said, yeah, but I own the police. I have friends. I run their parties for them. I have a different set of resources. There's another business event called Fuck Up Nights. And that's where that's a branded business event. And it's where a couple hundred business people get together and listen to speakers who talk about their biggest failures. They share the failures because you start to understand that in every failure is a success coming next. Once you understand why it failed, nobody gets here because everything succeeds. I'm lucky that most of the things I do have always succeeded. I can try something right out of the gate that I've never done before and probably succeed. But that's not necessarily a win if I'm not learning the things that I need to know from the failures. That's generally because I watch other people fail and I try to learn from their mistakes because it's less painful.
The one thing I discovered in my previous career was a proposal to reduce the property tax load for the business. And this predates my participating in that business by about 20 years. And it was tabled and brought forward and shelved. And then I came along, the idea was floated again. We went forward and successfully gained the boon in question. The lesson learned from that was sometimes it's a good idea, it's just not a right time for the good idea. So I think that's part of the process. Which leads me to the next part of this is it's the art of telling that story. So storytelling, you're doing it already. You're doing it through, it's not just verbiage and video recording or audio recording, but it's also with effects. That's fascinating. So how do you craft a story It's like going from paper to ta-da. How do you make that happen?
Part of it is being creative. I've always been creative. I've always been capable of thinking outside of the box. But a large chunk of it is also I have a fairly strong understanding of my audience. So I have a pretty clear picture. I had a very clear picture of my audience, and I knew what they would actually understand. I'm realizing that at my age now, I'm not as connected with the youngest audience as I was. I know that the youngest audience uses TikTok and Instagram and various other social messaging platforms that I don't use heavily. I understand the way to integrate people and get them to react to a story, but I don't know necessarily how to reach them. So I use other people. That's why our film production company, we have a separate person that is a media expert and a separate person that is our writer. We throw ideas around and they get picked up on. In events, you don't have usually a team. You're building something and you have to put yourself in the shoes of the audience and go, okay, what would blow my mind? What would be amazing? What are ways that I can communicate to the audience the message I'm trying to promote? I've noticed that particular idea is missing from most business corporate events. They forget that the people attending are their ultimate audience. They're trying to serve their clients and not their audience. The result is they're producing very similar staged events that have all the demographics and all of this, and their audience forgets them the moment they're gone. Forgetting. If your event is forgettable, then you haven't done it right. I have events now that I ran in 2009 and people are still talking about today. And they're still asking, hey, when are you going to run that event again? And that event was like 15 years ago. And there was 70 people on Facebook talking about it, having a conversation about it. That one was successful. I think the event I just ran was successful because there was 400 people and they're still on buzzing and talking about it because I was able to reach the part of them that responds to stories. You asked at the beginning, how do I do that? I just do it. But putting yourself in the shoes of your audience is probably the way to do it. The same way we're making films. Bringing things up or doing things that are unexpected and have never been seen before. That's the spectacular part of what I do.
I attended a Blues Fest concert and just been attending these Blues Fest concerts in different sequences over the last 5 years, less the pandemic years. And there was a group that showed up and they were doing their music, right? So you have a light show. But this particular one sent large floating air bubbles or balls to the audience. And then they would shoot what looked like almost like a toilet paper roll, except it was well catapulted, a streamer across. And that was a wow factor effect, because even now remembering it. And I thought that was rather, it's just, I get the credit if they don't tell you they're going to unfurl that. And they're one of about 15 to 20 acts that are playing over that 10-day period. So it does have an impact.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very easy way to penetrate. The way I look at it, I have an anecdote where basically I say everybody's looking down at their phone or their book, or they're all looking down. And my goal is to have people look up and look around and go, wait, what's happening? The moment I've captured their attention, that means I've got the first step. That's step one. If people are expecting to go to a concert and sit in a chair, watch and go home, then you've got a roadblock readily. You've got a lack of engagement and an expectation of disengagement. People's brainwaves are at a lower energy when they're watching TV than they are when they're sleeping. It is the ultimate passive entertainment. But you can change that by changing the actual TV program. If that TV program is thought-provoking and asks questions, subtly, you can actually have people start to engage their brain and be more active while watching it. And the joy of that is when people are more active when they're watching it, they're going to talk about it afterwards. Now you have a win. You've started a conversation. You've got communication, and communication leads to community.
Absolutely.
Segue, Chris.
You think I've written stuff like this? But actually, that segue was brand new. That came out of this program 5 minutes ago. But I think that's the other thing to learn is always be aware, listening, looking, paying attention, seeing what your audience or your community is resonating with.
I think you're a bit of a dichotomy. I've lived a great deal of my life with passionate drivers, and they had to rely on other people, usually technical people, to make it. You have been on both sides of that, make it happen. How can you create a shared language when it might as well be English and Swahili with the way these people look at life?
That one's tricky. That one's not always possible. A large chunk of that does come from a background I have in coaching and consulting. But a lot of that comes from having somewhere a shared passion. There's a shared energy in there somewhere. If you've got nothing in common with the person you're trying to communicate with, you're very unlikely to be able to make the communication work. I worked in an environment where I was building very high-end cabinets. The employer brought in 30 Romanians to build cabinets, and they didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak a word of Romanian, and we had to work together building very intricate high-end cabinetry. The passion and the shared ground that we had was we were all skilled cabinet makers. So we didn't have a language in common, but the language was the wood. And that's how we were able to find common ground. I'm lucky that I can share common ground with a technician who's implementing the things I've done. This is where the real value of being a jack of all trades comes in. I highly don't recommend that, by the way. It's too hard to do these days. The jack of all trades, master of none, isn't actually true. You can become a master of multiple trades, especially in today's environment. Having the context to be able to communicate with people you're working with, for example, in fireworks or in cabinetry or in website design, having a smattering of that makes it so much easier to communicate with the people. If you don't have that technical language, you have a creative language. Even the people that are purely technical, they have a certain amount of understanding of, I need it to look like this. If they're still not able to understand, bringing in another person to facilitate the communications, that's where you'd bring in an assistant or a showrunner or event producer to work on your behalf and communicate to them and put in somebody who is a translator. Translators are absolutely necessary. For example, I've been the translator for executives that wanted a software package. They literally said, yeah, we wanted to look like this and look like this. You got it? And that was me waving my hands a little bit like Kermit the Frog. They expected the programmers to get it. And of course, the programmers were not, they were listening to their own internal narrative about what they thought. So the actual idea wasn't communicated effectively. So I would go in and go, oh, okay, you want that. And then I would confirm with the executive what exactly they wanted. And I'd make them give it to me in a way that I can write it down. And then I'd go and take that to the programmers and say, in programming speak, this is what they're looking for. And they ask me questions, we clarify it. And so I bridge the gap. I mentioned earlier about generational communication. Having somebody that can bridge that communication gap is also essential. And you use translators all the way through. And that's back to why community is so important, because those translators will step up in your community when you need them. And when they understand, when you've communicated that need to your community, they will step in.
You have a wide range of events that you managed and produced. You talked about this one show for a town. You've been on the movie set with Riddick. We've talked about this in the past. You're explaining to me steam pipes you're running underground, almost like the prisoners escaping that sun planet, to the Vancouver Olympics. That's a fairly major project. How do you get into the headspace in a movie set you have what the producer has in mind, what the artist has in mind, right? Whoever wrote the script, there's a projection there. Vancouver Olympics, it's about people competing and people coming in. And I have to put some pizzazz around. How do you work those lessons? How do you bring them in? And what do you come back with that you apply later on in small projects or other future projects?
For example, on the movie set, The people below the line, the technicians, have no creative control. It's far too far down the pipe to make any creative changes. So all we can do is occasionally cringe, but we do what we're told. At that level, we have no ability to do anything other than execute the specific visual gag we've been given to the best of our ability. Even when I moved up to assistant coordinator or coordinator, it's the same process. We're given a visual gag that somebody who has creative control has asked for, and our ability is to give it to them to the best of our ability to show as much of the value of that gag on the screen as possible. So we have no creative control. It makes the job simple. All we're managing is people and budgets and timelines, which is still not all that simple. But it simplifies, it removes our obligation. The business part is removed in that it's not on our heads how well this does. That's one of the reasons why I switched to executive producer role, because I do have creative control and I do have buy-in and I want to actually make it for the audience. The reason that I was able to make that switch is because I already understood community. I learn every day in everything that I do, and I value it and I propagate that knowledge across everything that I do in every field that I work in. I went to the American film market just last month, and I learned and clarified the design process for making a film that is commercially successful actually means going to community first, going to the end result, imagining the audience, communicating with your potential audience, and coming with that understanding. Now go all the way to the back and pick your script, start at the end of it and work back, and then do this iteration many times. Each time it informs the decision you're making at the front end. So you time travel. The Olympics feels like a massively different thing. The lesson that I learned from the Olympics, we bid on the opening and closing ceremonies. We had a special effects based technical company. We had enough people, we had enough resources. So we bid on the opening and closing ceremonies. And I think we bid 1.4 million. These are all a long time ago. But the winning bid was $500,000. And I went, oh my God, how is he going to make it for $500,000? And then it was real simple. It's like, the Olympics didn't care about the local audience. We're not trying to fill an entire stadium with confetti. We need to fill the camera angles for the global broadcast. They have to have confetti, but only along the camera angles. And the audience in the stadium, the 50,000 people, will see it enough to get the feel, but you can save a lot of money. It turns out that 500,000 was too low because it cost them 800,000, but it was half. And that's one of the lessons that I learned. And then the rest of that event was actually me being called on for my special skills and our team's special skills to build specific pieces of the Olympics. And then somebody in a creative role said, I want this. And we, okay, you want an indoor ski ramp. Okay, let's build you an indoor ski ramp. Oh, you want this. Okay, let's do that. Oh, you did this. It inverted the roof of the stadium so that there was now a bowl on the top of the stadium, and it was filling with water when it rained. And it would occasionally invert, and there was particular designs in it that it would actually dump the water because otherwise the rain would collapse the roof entirely. But it would dump 400 to 600 gallons of water into a single seat below. And if that had actually happened when somebody was in the seat, they would have been grievously injured, perhaps killed. So we went, let's fix that. And so we then managed for the entire run of the Olympics and the Paralympics. I was on the roof managing the water. I was managing the crew, making sure that did not happen. So you adapt. The rule that I learned from the Olympics was adapt, and learn. But I learned that from everything else. Reinforced. The other thing I learned doing presentations after the Olympics, I did a lot of presentations on what we did and how we did it. And the first one that I did, I got pulled aside after the presentation and told, oh yeah, just so you know, we don't talk about the failures. We don't talk about any of the bad things that happened or any of the things that could have been done better. And I was like, oh, so you people don't learn. Good to know. And it's been since then that I actually discussed some of the things that didn't go as planned, because I feel for the right audience, that is the right conversation.
Chris, something that I have noticed about you that I think is a systemic change for the good. If you networked in the 80s in person and had your inch of business cards, your mindset was, who can help me right now that I can plug in the next 15 minutes? It was a very transactional, almost mercenary meeting where you seem to have done a better job and said, tell me a story. What are you hoping to accomplish that takes a lot longer to fill, but has a much better result? I just wanted to ask your thoughts on that.
Good question. So it's still very transactional. Business networking. There is a lot of people that show up with their business cards at hand, and their objective is to hand out those business cards. And then there's another group of people that still have a handful of business cards, but they want to see whether you're a capable buyer because they want to close you on the spot. Usually you grow out of that. I'm always about building community no matter what I do. On my LinkedIn, I say I'm a global consultant in the intersection between community, events, and entertainment. But if you think about it, events are for people to build community, and entertainment is entertaining your community, and you've got to get to know your community. That's my focus. That makes it very simple to release the transactional style of networking and say, how can we work together? How can we collaborate? That's how you build global networks. That's how you build what we've built with all the different projects that we work on, and some of them we work on together, and why we collaborate. There is a side effect, though. Sometimes you forget that you need to earn money. So you do have to refocus on a regular basis and make sure that you're actually meeting the transactional requirements. But if you've got a community, this is where you actually have a lot more strength. It's, hey guys, I need to sell something today. And somebody can say, oh, okay, let me buy this from you. It's not always that easy, but some days it does happen. I have definitely put it out there where, hey guys, I have a short-term financial crisis. I need some help. Does anybody have the ability to extend me some credit? And one of the people stepped up and said, hey, how much do you need? 15 grand? Done. Don't worry about it. This happened earlier this year where I was having a small crisis with needing to pay for several cranes and moving shipping containers. It was heinous. A friend that I had never met before stepped up and said, I got your back. You can put your stuff here. Here's the money. I'll pay for the cranes. That was based on the strength of my relationship with a friend of his. You deal with Dan in a way that I deal with Dan, and I respect that. I know that you already have the authenticity that I value, that I want to do business with. As a result, we're now doing business where he's got potentially 24 storefronts, and he needs equipment for it. And this equipment is worth tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on configuration. And I may have just sold 20 to 40 of them. But it's the relationships, and it's back to community. It's all about being genuine and authentic with the people that you're trying to serve. You're there to help the community. If you've got that in your mind, they will support you.
The one thing I found over time, the people, you just highlighted, out of left field, someone comes along, you know this guy, I know this guy. So the connection isn't necessarily one leap out from yourself, who you're talking to. It's a second or third leap out or tangent. And that's really critical. And the only way to find that is people have to know who you are, how you operate, and so forth. If you are just starting out, you plant your flag on the ground going, I'm here and I'm doing this. Sometimes I can feel a bit lonely. What advice would you have for the entrepreneur? Yeah, they have some background, but now they're starting a new venture. And it's in a whole new field. There's some lawyers that have been doing the legal profession, and they picked something totally outside of that box. Nothing to do with the law. So how do I make this work? What advice would you have for the entrepreneur that's just dropped themselves in a new project?
You reminded me of a quote I use every time I'm talking to new entrepreneurs and people that have already been doing this for maybe anywhere up to 20 years and don't quite understand the value of networking. It's not who you know, and it's not what you know. It's who knows what that makes a difference. because the more your audience knows what you can provide for them, the unique value proposition, they will tell it to their friends. When their friends say, I need this, and you go, I know somebody, I got a guy. Because everybody wants to be the hero and they want to refer. And most of the time, it's not about referral fees or anything else, but that helps. But it's about who can be the hero and who can help out their friends. And that's what I would actually probably start with, telling somebody who's just parachuted into a totally new business. You need to find people who know more than you, because you're in a brand new field. You don't know the nuances. You don't know what marketing works and what doesn't. You're in an entire field of unknowns. So let's go learn that. How do you learn that? Go learn that from the experts. Join a networking group or professional association that knows the things that you don't. Start to make friends, because friends are good. Friends what gets you started. And especially if you understand that there's more than enough work for everybody and nobody's actually competing, that's a great start. Even if you start with a business networking, a general networking on the side, and a professional association that can help you learn, do both. Before you know anything, start promoting. You can't say the wrong thing to the right person. There we go. If you're talking to somebody who desperately needs your expertise and you fumble over the introduction, but they can sense that you've got the right heart and supply what they need, they're going to close. They're going to get you the sale that you need to get started, and you'll learn. Every time you do that, you're going to learn more. You'll learn on the job. You wouldn't have picked that field if you didn't have some passion and some understanding of it. Let your passion show. Start that whole community building. You're starting from scratch, maybe, or maybe not. What about your past communities? How many of those people actually want to know what you're doing now? Maybe you were their favorite lawyer in the world and they loved you always talking about baking. And now that you've opened up a bake shop, they're absolutely passionate about participating in your dream and becoming part of your baking community. You've taken a right turn, but you're following your passion, and everybody who was part of your community before is still part of your community. They're the community around you. A friend of mine explained that. He says, dude, tell us what you're doing. We want to know. We want to be involved with your journey. We really want to hear what you're doing. So please let us know. That was part of the conversation that developed an entire method of communication and follow-up around keeping your community in touch.
Speaking of community, Chris, you live in the west part of Canada. You work extensively in Vegas and probably Los Angeles. How big is your scope? Is it the world? Is it?
It is the world. I deal all across Canada. I've got partners in Washington, D.C., a new one in Vegas, some in Los Angeles, in Australia, in Sweden, in the UK, in Hungary. But that's because community, this is the joys of pandemic, is we're online so much that the lines are blurring. The lines between countries, the lines between continents are blurring. I've been working for years with a friend in South Africa, and we just heard that we may have the funding for a university in Uganda. I'm talking to somebody who's going to Japan. The first thing I said was, keep in touch. Let's talk. Let's build a bridge between Japan and Vancouver. There's already a bridge, but let's build a new one. Let's build more around those relationships, because it is that easy. We're in a really fabulous world right now in the fact that we can have communities that are completely geographically independent. You can reach me through LinkedIn. I'm not hard to miss. Chris Sturges on LinkedIn. I also have web pages, chrissturges.com, I believe I have, and chris.sturges.ca. But through the World Referral Network, I'm working as a referral partner and a number of other partner levels. I run my own chapter of the World Referral Network, 2 chapters now. We have an in-person Langley meeting every week called Spectacular Events and Entertainment. The best way is probably LinkedIn, and I also offer a free consulting service, half hour of consulting, probably rolls into an hour. But if you have questions around the idea of community or events or film, I'm happy to start a conversation, and I'm always happy to consult on that as well.
I want to say thank you to Chris Sturges, my co-host, Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. Looking to host an event? Want to make it spectacular? Want to make it in person? Chris is the lad. He can make that come together. Whether you're in the space or into the Olympics, it all fits into the box.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGH2.com. To reach Wayne at his email, waynemotive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Webber, Bernie's invaluable business partner. And Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc, who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.